So are we getting this thing started?
I guess
I think we are.
We didn't talk about an intro, did we?
Yeah. Well, what is this show? I guess we start with
The UX files.
UX files.
The UX files. Cue creepy alien music or no?
Yeah, that's
Are we
coming
doing
down
that?
the
Did we talk
line.
about?
Down the line.
Do-do-do-do-do-do-do.
Intros. Who wants to
Intros.
start with intros?
Why don't you start?
I'm Tori, and I am a product or UX designer. I currently work at OpenGov, but just trying to get together and talk about some design stuff. Who's next? John or John?
I'll go. I'm John Pope, so I'll probably be referred to as Pope more than John since we're both Johns. But am an art director at Frontline Education, so I help manage the visual brand for them.
Nice. My name is John Eckert. I am a user experience designer at aha.io, which makes roadmaps or makes software that helps people make roadmaps.
The software itself doesn't just make the roadmaps for you. Is that what you're saying?
You just you hit
just
the
do it
big
all.
you hit the big green make me a roadmap button
Okay.
and it tells you what to do. Yeah,
I do like
that's
that.
pretty good.
I was
You heard it here.
So, what is UX Files, and what are we planning on doing in this episode? I think there's going to be a little bit of news, right? Maybe. And then, well, the core of the show is going to be reviewing a design, a application, or some other thing, and going through some critiquing. Maybe. Does that sound about right?
That sounds about right. So we sort of looked at the podcast landscape and thought there wasn't really a lot of UX related There are some UX related podcasts, but if you compare it to other other categories like true crime, I mean, we could make this a true crime. We could do like a murder mystery.
That's
design.
That's episode 9.
Yeah.
Or like tech podcasts. Like there's not quite as many on the design front, so we thought that would be something that we know a little something about and would like to create. So it's going to be, I think, a hodgepodge probably of things that we're interested in, but all centered around design and experience and that sort of thing. So
It's a design experiment,
yeah,
That's right.
I guess.
so we might as well get started because we're just sitting here looking at this bank, which we can see how rich Tori is in his bank account.
I'm not on that right now. I'll switch to it. Yeah, we're gonna talk about
That's what we see.
John.
Oh,
John has
I didn't
a
know that
bone
we
to
weren't
pick.
seeing the same thing.
John has a bone to pick with the new feature that was rolled out with Simple expenses. I guess it was an overhaul to expenses, and I'd use the old version. But John, I'll let you take it away if you want, and I'll click where you want me to click.
Sure. Yeah, so first a little background. If you're not familiar with Simple, Simple has been around for, I should have looked this up. It's been quite a while. I've been a Simple member
5 years at least.
I think it's been more than that. I actually think I was on their wait list for multiple years before I actually got in. Like, I was really excited about it. And their whole thing, they were the original, like, design first experience, highly enjoyable customer experiences as far as banks go, online only, mobile first style banks. There are a lot of them out there now, but they were one of the first, and they have been good at it, and I've been very happy with them. So a while ago, a couple of years ago maybe, they released this expenses feature, which is essentially budgeting built in. And when they released it, essentially you would create a budget, and each budget would have 2 buckets as part of that budget. One bucket was one you would spend from, and one you'd be saving for the next month or whatever period that you want to spend from. It was actually not a very well, I never thought it was a very well executed feature. It was confusing and hard to use from the start, but once you got once you figured it out, it was powerful. It did what it was supposed to do. And essentially how I was using it, and I think how it was meant to be used, was you would be, let's say in the month of September, you are spending from the bucket that you saved up for, that you added to in August. And then in September, the same time that you're spending the money that was from August, you're saving money for October. So you're essentially budgeting a month ahead of time. And that feature made it really easy. And because it was 2 buckets, which was confusing, you could do that. You could save for one while spending from the other. And you got the whole budget experience where you see how much you have. And as you spend, it drains slowly or quickly, depending on how you're spending.
Maybe.
And then when you're at zero, you're at zero. And so it worked really well, even though it wasn't easy to get the hang of. So in the last couple of weeks, Simple has decided that it was too difficult for people to understand and learn, which I agree with, and that they would change how expenses work, which again, I think is probably the right choice. I actually don't think they should.
Software should never change.
That's right.
It's a pain
I
when
agree.
software changes.
Never should change. The same old is
says the product
right
designers.
Way. Right.
So
did you have a question, Tori?
Well, what about this new, and I kind of know, but what about this new setup is like different to start off with?
Yeah. So basically the big change is that they took away the 2 buckets concept. So now every expense is a single bucket. So you can imagine, if you are used to budgeting the way that I described, probably not very well, where you're spending at the same time that you are saving for the next month, what would end up happening is let's just say that I have a rent mortgage budget like you have here of $1,200, and I have this expense set up to have money added to it every payday, so twice a month, and I get paid the 15th and the last day of the month. So rent and mortgage is actually not a great example.
Okay,
let's say groceries.
I'll just create one then. Groceries.
Yeah, let's say groceries, and let's make it easy, $200.
Okay.
I wish my grocery budget was $200.
Yeah, that would be great.
I would love that.
$200 is like just the apples.
And you're buying a lot of apples.
So do you typically choose beginning of the month then?
Yeah, so let's say October 31st is when I want to start using it. So that's when we're going to have it ready to go.
Okay.
Sorry, I meant first. I said 31st.
You did first. Okay.
Make it the first. Yes. All right, so I need it every month.
First of every
month.
And so here's where I start to throw my 2 cents in. It's just so many steps to set this thing up. Like, I'm already confused as to why I'm not just done already. Like,
yeah.
That's my confusion. And I guess I can figure it out, but like, we'll go on. Let's go on.
Simpler version of this. So to their credit, once you create a funding schedule, like you just select from.
I'm gonna add a funding schedule, and I like the 15th. I'm gonna do that.
You do the 15th and
last day, because that's when I get paid.
That's what I did. Yep.
Payday. Okay, so on payday is when we want to contribute. Okay, so now.
Okay.
The first of every month, I want to have 200 available.
I want $200 ready for me at the first of every month, and so I am going to fund that budget on payday, which is twice a month, the 15th and the last day of the month. So it will automatically calculate that to be $100 per payday. So that is how that's how it used to be. Well, I mean, that is how it still is, obviously. But what it used to be is because there were two buckets. I would have my $200 on the first of, let's say, again, September, that I was saving in August, the month previous. And then as I'm spending that money, I'm seeing that bucket dwindle. So let's say I go to the store and I spend $50. So I have $150 left. So that's a budget. Like I can see how much I have, I can see how much I've spent, and I can see how much I have left. Yeah. At the same time, though, I have my funding schedule, which is automatically contributing twice a month. So that's how it worked. It worked fairly well. It was hard to understand because basically you're doing what we did here, which is somewhat confusing, but then you have to somehow grok the two bucket thing. But the problem now is on the 15th of the month, let's say that by the 15th, I've spent $100 of my $200 budget, okay? Which is pretty good. About half of the way through the month, spent about half of my grocery budget. Great. But on the 15th, if you remember, I am contributing for the next month. And because I'm doing it twice a month, I'm contributing $100 on the 15th of the month when I get paid. So now in the one bucket system, the new way that they have this set up, my grocery budget says I have $200.
Yeah.
Because I had $100 from the last month. I've spent $100 and I just contributed another $100.
So it says you have $200.
It says I have $200, which means, and so basically my budget is full at the beginning of the month or at the middle of the month.
Voila.
And so, and I'm like, what do I do? How can I, sure, I could keep track of this in a spreadsheet, but then what's the point of using expenses in Simple? Like that's the whole point of doing it that way.
So what do we feel like the problem that they were trying to solve with these changes? Like, was the old one deemed too complicated?
I think the two bucket system was confusing people.
And so this is meant to be a simplification of you just have a amount of money that you know you need to spend per month. It's just a less, and I've had this issue in other budget software where it's like very unclear at any given time of the month, like how far along am I in my budget? Because you can see it ticking up in some cases, but like you said, like it's kind of nice. The whole envelope method, which is essentially what you were doing, which is you set aside an amount and then you see it disappear, is actually a really good way of thinking about it because it forces you to say, oh, I only have $10 left. I can only buy that, one bag of Cheetos or something. I can't buy 10 bags of Cheetos.
Expensive bag of Cheetos. A $10 bag of Cheetos, man. Come on.
Cheetos man, processed foods are expensive.
Yeah, but $10.
I don't know. This is Pittsburgh. You're
getting ripped off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's my biggest complaint. And here's the thing: as a product designer who works in software as a service in the enterprise, I understand needing to make changes and knowing that it will make some people upset. And I get that. I don't even fault them for making this change because I will admit this was not well executed in the first place. A change needed to happen. The problem is they released a feature that was very clearly meant to be used a certain way. The two bucket system, envelope, whatever. It was clearly meant to be used in a certain way, and they changed it. Not just changing the UI, not just making me tweak my workflow. They fundamentally changed how I budget. Now, I will say I have come up with a way to somewhat get the same result using this. The problem, and basically what I've done is I've just said my funding schedule now is the last day of the month.
You just fund
and it's ready for
the
the first of the month.
Yeah.
But the difference here is that when Simple would do that every payday, my safe to spend, which is basically what I can spend, it hides what I don't want to spend, what I need to save for other stuff. And so my safe to spend would be low on purpose because I would put all of the money in these expense buckets, which was that's a smart way to hack your brain when you're talking about finances, not to overspend. And so now what will happen is all month I'll have all of this money in my save to spend because I'm waiting for it to get put into these buckets so that I can spend it for the next month, which is just, hopefully I have enough discipline to not spend that. I'm not really concerned about that. It's just more like you broke the feature. Like the whole point of the feature and goals and expenses in Simple is it hides the money from you. There's a safe to spend like amount.
So,
which doesn't work anymore. Go ahead.
for one, I wanted to say, Pope, did you have any comments? Because John and I are both very passionate about this, obviously.
Well, as I come from a very brand-oriented background, so with a lot of marketing and branding on that side of the design. And in general, I feel like the name of the company, their brand is simple, yet they're making this so much seemingly more difficult to actually put in your expenses. Just listening and and just to be totally upfront, I've never used Simple before. I'm basing just on my perspective through our conversations about this, but it doesn't match up to what the whole name and the whole brand that they have for their company.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff here, like I actually didn't mind the old feature, and this one I don't really use it. I use YNAB, which is way more complicated actually, but
yes.
it makes sense like the old previous version. It makes sense once you set it up because you basically have buckets that you put all of your money in some sort of bucket, and then any leftover can roll over to the next month, and it gives you like this really good running tally. It allows you to save for stuff really easily. The thing I don't like about this is it kind of feels like there was requirements written on paper, and I've always felt this way about like, hey, these are all the things that we need to accomplish. And then it was like, let's put all of those on the screen at once. Because like, I'm just looking like money in per every Sunday, September 20, like I don't really have like, I think some of it's maybe a visual sense. I feel like there could be some small changes to make this a little bit more visual, like maybe a calendar that shows me when money's coming in, when I have my funding set up. And like the whole funding schedule thing is very strange to me, and I guess I get it, but I feel like there's got to be a way to simplify that so you don't have to set up like separate. Like I've never seen any other app that does this whole funding schedules thing. So maybe there is, but like it doesn't make any, like it feels really weird to me.
And even the copy, like you're saying, the copy it doesn't sound quite right. Money in per every Sunday. It just doesn't.
Okay, and so this is renameable. So that's me typing every Sunday. But the problem is that's a perfectly legitimate name. But it's but the way that it's represented, like you said.
Did you write per, or is per?
No,
built
per
in?
is so money comes in per, and per means what you set up. And I set up an every Sunday thing, which also happens to be every Sunday because they also give you like a legitimate, like this is happening every Sunday because it's deterministic or whatever. But
they don't expect you to name it so literally, probably, which is why it seems so weird. I wonder, like, I remember when funding schedules first came out with the original expenses, and I was confused for like months about how to use it. And I feel like, especially listening, I'm used to it now, but listening to you guys, would it be that hard for me to just tell you when I want each expense to fund? And like maybe you can be smart about remembering the last one I used, but like having to create up these separate like records that live somewhere in their own like part of a database, like that's a thing in the system, just feels like it's overkill. I do have go ahead, Tori. I have another like marketing related thought that I want to get John's thoughts on, but
you go.
So okay, product designer for enterprise, I get it. This sometimes you have to do this stuff, and sometimes you have to make people angry for the greater good. Because maybe they did a bunch of research and this really was better for most users. Okay, maybe that's the case. I'll give them that. But so let's just assume that this was going to happen no matter what. Okay, okay, that's fine. Then the other part of the issue that I've had, and this is where it gets more into like general customer experience, like marketing, communications, and that sort of thing, is how they communicated this to us as customers. I sent you guys, or at least John, some of the emails we got where they do mention that these things are coming, but they also send a lot of marketing emails.
Yeah.
The way that this stuff was mentioned, like I think I saw that expenses changes were coming, but I didn't really like look at it super closely. It didn't do anything to like yell at me to say big changes are coming that will mess with your workflow or your budget, that will make you change how you spend money. And then the way that they have handled, like even just a simple knowledge base article that's titled used to do the like envelope budgeting with the 2 bucket system, try these tips, and some way to help me and like to empathize with me as the user.
Was there any migration path? Like,
no,
it just like reset stuff. Okay.
According to the emails, it was 7 days before they actually launched the change. They sent out an initial email stating that changes were coming and when they were coming.
Huh.
But and so the headline isn't necessarily. Sorry, I don't mean to.
No. Go ahead.
But going into the email, the headline is "Get ready for better budgeting," which that's not a bad headline. It's that's fine, but it doesn't specifically. If you're just glancing through emails, because all of us just look at emails quickly, especially marketing emails. I mean, we send out millions and millions of emails at Frontline every year. And I know half of them aren't viewed really, but
half
you get used. Like,
that's a marketer talking. People love to read our emails.
Oh yeah, all the time. But either way, it doesn't state right away that changes are coming until you get down and you actually read in the normal body copy of the email. It just says "Get ready for better budgeting," and that could be just you getting a marketing email saying, hey, you should use this for budgeting better or something. There's a lot of ways you could take that. It doesn't initially say right away, like, this is what's coming. Now, it does state very clearly what is coming and what's changing as you read down through. But when you first are looking at a marketing email like this, it should, if it's a big change like this this isn't even a marketing email. To be clear, this should be a product. Maybe design it a little more clear to show that it is for users, not necessarily.
Here's the changes. Blah
blah
blah.
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing, like, I don't know if it's the same everywhere, but like where I work, this is the kind of thing like product would collaborate with marketing because marketing kind of controls the communications with customers unless it's like a user interview type thing. This kind of thing was controlled by marketing, but it's generated, it's prompted by product. And so, there would be that collaboration. And the thing is, I even think I read the email. It's not like I didn't see the email. I think that my brain didn't allow me to even comprehend the potential thought that they would take away like my ability to see how much money I have left in my budget. Like it didn't, I figured they would just have a better 1 bucket way of handling it.
Did they call the 1 bucket thing coming up section? Is that what they would call it? Because it does say goodbye to the coming up section.
No, like there were 2 buckets. One was the coming up and one was like the available now or something like that. So coming up was what you were saving for the next month or the next pay period, pay time frame.
To be fair to the designers and the product teams at Simple, I think I have used almost countless number of different budgeting software, and every single one of them falls short in some way.
Yes.
For instance, like I said, YNAB falls short because it's basically an Excel spreadsheet and just kind of throws everything out there at you. I happen to like it. I think it works for what I do, but I've used a bunch of others that were too simple. Like all they did was you set up the budget for the month and then expenses go into those buckets. And that's a little too simple for, I think, anybody who's trying to like hack their finances and do it like actually cares about it and not just somebody who's like, oh, I've never done this before, like show me how to do it, which is totally valid, but like it is hard and it's a problem that I think
Yeah.
many companies have tried to solve. I do think the interesting thing is like the ones that are attached to a payment source or a bank account, like Simple, they tend to work differently. Like my Chase credit card has like a built-in thing, and it does some weird stuff because it is attached directly to something. I do think that might be a fun future episode to examine some differences between some of these budgeting softwares. I think that could be cool.
I would love that. And I agree. Like part of the reason that it sounds like I'm like hating on Simple. I'm not. I love Simple. When this happened, I did sort of out of anger look at other banks out there. There's nothing really in my mind that compares from a user experience, a user interface, a feature standpoint. Like Chime is probably the biggest competitor, but they don't have joint accounts. Like, so their Simple is in my mind still the leader, but that's part of why I am so frustrated that they
none of the big banks
do
are
something
good.
None of them are good.
Zero.
Their apps are terrible. Yeah, they're gonna charge you extra. Like, there's so many good things about Simple. I don't want to like come across as that I'm like just purely hating and bashing on them. I still am gonna use them. It's just I felt like betrayed as a customer because it wasn't that they just had like a limited functionality like you were talking about, Tori, where like, oh well, some budgets it's just limited or whatever. It was like they gave us a feature. They said start budgeting this way. And then they took it away. And so that's what's frustrating. And there was no like, when you talk to support, you get the standard, we're sorry you feel that way, but we are trying to always improve. Like no empathy, no like articles that are like, here's how you can transition from the one to the other. Like just nothing like that. And that's
there any
what
type
really
of
bothers
walkthrough
me.
when you come into onto the site?
Okay. This leads me into what I think would be a great sum up section for this is, what could they have done? Because I don't think this is that far off the mark. But what could they have done, in your guys' opinion, to make this thing a fully successful launch from obviously our perspectives?
John, if you want to talk about you can talk about the like product design too. But if you have any thoughts on like how they could have better communicated or marketed or whatever. What they did launch, go ahead, and then I have some ideas for maybe how the product could have improved.
I think they probably could have done a few more of their emails, further giving you more of a chance to see some of the ones that they've sent. So based on what you've sent me, they sent 2 emails, one initially announcing that there's a change coming and the one saying the change is here, like it's changed now. Especially working for a software company we have tons of users. We've seen times when we've just changed things early in the early days, and again, users, that affects them a lot. Like it can put the support team in a panic. But I think they could have. One recommendation I would have made is start these earlier, have a few more of them, maybe 3, announcing that it's coming. Maybe have a blog posting that talks about how ways that this is going to change or how you can use it or adjust what you've been doing to transition into this new way to do it. Maybe something that explains it really simply to a new user or to a current user specifically. And maybe just for the emails, because this could, again, I don't know what their normal marketing emails look like. But they could have some type of way of visually showing that this is to current users and something you really need to read. It's not your normal marketing email or normal email you get from them. I think that's one way they could do it. And like a walkthrough possibly that pops up in the interface once you get on there to walk through the changes.
Again, there was no tutorial about changes in-app, correct?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. That seems like a pretty easy fix. Like when you introduce a pretty sweeping change, give people at least some sort of, or kick them off to a help article. I mean, in enterprise, we often just kick people off to a help article because we don't really have the bandwidth to like do a tour for every feature. But like for a big feature change in an app, even in an enterprise app, it's like The most success I've seen with feature releases is when we also tell people how to use said feature, like pretty simply in the app, because going to a help article is extra work for people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, I think what you guys are saying makes a lot of sense. And like I said, like if the change had to happen, I understand that happens, but it could have been communicated better. It could have been handled better. Only because we're talking about money, like individual people's finances, which
it's a huge
that's
deal.
different. It's different than if
Yeah.
like Facebook makes a big change and people can't find where the events page is. They get mad at that, but they're not like it doesn't really affect them.
Facebook is the lifeblood of America. So
maybe and Russia, but maybe that's true. Maybe that's true, but they don't hold my finances. So
yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
I did actually do for my own fun and sake, I did a mock-up. I don't have it to show, but off the top of my head, but I know that it's kind of like silly to try and like say, oh, I can just redesign it. Like it's easy. Like, see?
Yeah.
Because as we all know that there are a lot of other factors, whether it's product managers, whether it's like the requirements you mentioned, Tori, whether it's engineering, feasibility and timing and limitations, all of that. So I get that and I understand that. But one thing that I thought could have helped, because Simple already does this concept or like uses this concept in all of its functionality really, really well. And what I think they could have done is they could have kept the 2-bucket system, but they could have simplified it in the UI and how it's talked about. So no longer have the coming up in the available now buckets. Just have one expense, and have like in the background, have the computer do all of the magic stuff. Basically where I go through a wizard and I say everything we went through already. Like, this is what I want. This is what I want it by. This is how much I want to save. And then when I'm spending the money, you should know that I'm spending it, and I'm spending it from that, pay period or whatever. But at the same time, you should know that the money that I'm contributing during that pay period is for the next pay period. Like, you should let me set that up in a way. And then the one expense and the one bucket can have like 2 little charts or something that says, this is how much you're spending for this month, this pay period. This is how much you're saving for next pay period or pay whatever. Again, maybe oversimplifying it, but it may be just a different way to do the same thing that they were doing before, which maybe isn't the right choice. Another idea I had was let existing users keep the old functionality at least for a little while, while they're like grokking the change, and you can still give new users the new functionality. That's easy. So if I'm a new user, if you think that's better for newer users, let them have the new functionality with the one bucket. Let me at least like get my stuff in order before you change it on me, because it like literally felt like a punch in the gut, because I'm like, what do I do? Like my budgets are all messed up. Like, I don't know how much I've spent. So that even in itself could have been a nice way to help me transition into it. I'm not saying keep it around forever, but for an extended time, just so that I can get used to it.
Yeah, try winning product and dev over to the idea that, we have to do extra work to make a feature go live, though. Like, I run into that all the time. It's like, hey, we could do this pretty fairly simple thing, but that's going to require, and it's genuine extra dev time to do support like that. But like, those are the kind of things that help avoid eroding trust with your users.
Yeah. And if it, again, to go back to their literal brand name, I would hope, and again, I know that a lot of times brands don't always match up to their specific things, their statements and brand values and things they say, but their name is simple. So even if they need to spend a little extra more time to have that feature where maybe a pop-up comes up and it shows, hey, would you like to try the new way that we're going to change to expenses? Try now or wait until it shows up, and then maybe have a link, like we've said before, to an article.
Again, and beta stuff is incredibly valuable as feedback, and I've found it kind of hard in enterprise to push for beta releases because it is a little harder in enterprise, but this is a consumer product. Like, let people try stuff out, because I guarantee you people would have a number of people would have said something, hey, this is really different, maybe you should have a tour, like you get that kind of feedback regularly.
Yeah. So I don't want to I don't want to belabor this too much, but I do want to say
just
something
a little
positive.
We want to belabor it
quick.
like just the right
just
amount,
a little
though.
belaboring. Just again, like I said, like part of why I get so frustrated is that I have seen this company do really good things. In one example, just to maybe end this segment on a positive thing.
Sounds good.
Nobody that is fairly new to Simple would remember this, but people who have been around Simple for a long time will remember the transition from Bank Corp to what is it? BBVA Compass or whatever.
Yes.
Anyway,
correct.
Basically, Simple is not really a bank. Simple is a partner, a front end essentially to other banks who actually like handle the money and are insured and everything. So at some point, and I'm not sure why, I'm assuming there were political reasons or disagreements that they felt like they couldn't do the things they needed to do, or maybe they were just something that was less juicy. At some point, they switched partner banks, and essentially what that meant for the user was new bank account numbers, new credit card, new card numbers. So essentially all of these users, they had to say, hey, so we're going to change all of your numbers, which means you're going to have to change all of your payments, all of
direct deposit
everywhere
doesn't work anymore. Yeah.
Everything. It was a very difficult transition as a user, but it was one of the best, most like high quality walkthroughs that I've ever been through in a digital product. It was so well handled for such a difficult thing. Like I can't imagine being a UX designer trying to create a flow to transition people from one bank account to another in this when it's being forced on you like that. Because I'm sure there were a lot of angry people. But it was so well handled. And so like I know that this company can do such things in a high class, best of breed way. So when I see something like this, and it's just because I was one of the ones that was negatively affected, but I feel like, okay, you can do better than this. I know you can because I've seen it. One of the worst transitions possible for a designer or product manager to have to handle, you guys handled with like the best it could possibly have been done.
Yeah, and it's just half of it's just setting expectations, because you run into this all the time in like normal everyday life too, is when I expect when somebody's told me I'm gonna have like pancakes or good pancakes for dinner, like, and then I get like some toast instead, like it's not fulfilling. But if I had known it was toast, I probably would have been fine, right? It would have been like, oh, whatever. And so like if you know this thing's going to be pain, and I remember that transition too, and it was handled great. The marketing emails, like the way they came in at the time frames were really helpful. And I remember actually reading them, because however they wrote the subject lines and whatever, it was like, oh, this is probably something I should read. This isn't just open a CD or something, So whatever they did, and it's been a while, it's probably been like 3-4 years, right? But that, I agree. I totally agree with you. That transition was handled really well and ended up being really seamless for me, because I wasn't using it like for everything. It was just like business side of things or whatever. But yeah, totally. Cool.
Yeah, I was using it for everything. It's ending rough. Yeah, John and I felt a little unprepared, but
yeah,
I don't know. I think he's a pro.
As long as we know, everyone knows this is just us trying to throw something together and do something different and new.
We've been talking about doing this for a while now. We thought, you know what, the best way to start is to just start. You can't.
That's right.
You can't what's the saying? You can't finish a race you don't start, or something. Is that the saying? Did I just make that up?
I think that's exactly the saying.
It's-
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I mean,
perfect.
maybe you
like
made
that.
it up. I don't know.
I probably did. You know, I would. Just kidding.
It's your beard. It makes you very wise.
Well, thanks for listening, everybody.
Yes, thank you
Everybody,
very much.
the vast number of listeners out there, and it's been fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Spotify.
we hope you-
I just got a call from Spotify. They want to.
And we don't really
Acquire our
have like a
podcast.
teaser about what is next episode, because
But
we
there
don't.
will be a second
But there
episode.
will be episode 2 coming up in the
So
future
stay tuned.
with some other review of something. Maybe not always a product. I don't know. We'll see.
And it'll be awesome.
And this could be great.
So
Cool.
subscribe to our podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
All right,
See
everyone.
you guys.
See ya.
See y'all later.
Later.
Thanks for listening.